This is a short film illustrating the different types of interview techniques. The purpose of all interviews is to gather information about a certain event, issue or person. For some interviews, the purpose is to entertain an audience of viewers as well. We consume interviews via three main media types. These are TV, where we can see footage of filmed or live interviews. We also consume interviews on the radio, where we can hear entertainment or political interviews dependent on the station. We also consume interviews through magazines. We can read a variety of different interview styles dependent on the magazine you buy. My first interview is an example of a print online entertainment interview with Mick Jagger. The structure of this interview is quite simple. There is no introduction to the interviewee. However, the interviewer builds confidence through easy open questions at the beginning. As the interview goes on and the interviewer builds a rapport with Mick Jagger, he starts to use more direct and indirect hard-hitting questions like this. There is no summary or wind-up in the interview. The interview is an example of an entertainment interview because it is more likely to appeal to an audience who have a certain interest in the people being interviewed. It is also entertaining because it gives the viewer insight into what they are interested in from the interviewees. The second example of a television interview is slightly different in the way of structure and style. The interview starts with hard-hitting open questions that allow David Cameron to give a longer response.
Just listening to that press conference just now with Prime Minister Singh, do you ever get the impression that you've come here rather like some sort of bad internet dating agency looking for a serious long-term relationship, and India's not looking for the same thing at all?
Throughout this interview, the interviewer asks key questions that are hard-hitting for the interviewee to give a quick response.
But we're not doing quite as well as we might. Other people are doing better on some measurements. Do you think to some extent that's because you whistle a certain tune at home, whether it's on Europe or on immigration, and then you come here and reap the consequences?
At the end of the interview, there is no summary, just a wind-up by saying thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
This interview is political and only really appeals to the more mature audiences who have interest in politics. Because the style is much more formal, a wider variety of question types are used to get different responses from the interviewee. For example, the interviewer asks an indirect question which is more like a statement that provokes a response.
Just before you came here, you were in Eastleigh beating the drum on the immigration issue, and we're finding, talking to people, you must be finding it as well, one of the reasons the number of students from India, you want them to come, aren't coming to Britain in quite the numbers they were. There's been a serious plummet just recently, is in part because of the tone of that immigration debate. They don't feel welcome.
He does this to allow David Cameron to either agree or disagree with him. The interviewer also uses a closed question and repeats it to allow David Cameron to give a yes or no answer.
A big story back at home that's just broken. The man who's been heading off Gen for years is saying that we're at the top of a roller coaster on energy. We're about to go downhill very fast, and costs to the consumers will go up very fast. Is he right?
Well, what we're doing is a massive investment in the energy infrastructure of Britain.
Yeah, but is he right?
The third interview is a radio light-hearted interview with the band Mumford & Sons. This interview has a lot of structuring. The interview is opened with an introduction between the interviewer and the band.
It's Mumford & Sons. Hello.
Hello.
He uses developmental questions to ease them into the interview and get the ball rolling.
Ted, is it true that you're also known as T-Bear?
Yeah.
Did you give yourself the nickname?
Absolutely not.
He uses confidence building to make the band feel more comfortable.
Just for the benefit of the people at home, do you want to, one at a time, introduce the band?
Introduce
yourselves, yeah. Introducing each other might be confusing.
Okay, I'm Ben.
I'm Ted.
Winston.
And I'm Marcus.
Although we cannot see the interviewer or the band, he builds a rapport with them by asking easy questions and being more relaxed.
In my Mumford & Sons notes that I have here, it says that you met in a Folkster hangout in West London. Now,
they're real hippies.
Well, I've lived here for many years. Where are these Folkster hangouts and what goes on in them?
To keep the interview light-hearted, the interviewer does not use key questioning, but uses open questions to keep conversation, instead of using closed questions that provoke short answers and do not give us much information.
And you've had this fella Marcus Dravs producing it, who's done stuff with Brian Eno and Björk and Arcade Fire before now.
And the Maccabees.
Did he take the Maccabees too? Did he take the role of the grown-up? I imagine you lot are quite difficult to
All
shepherd.
right. At the end of the interview, there's a wind-up which wraps up the interview.
And if people want to find out more, you have a MySpace page, which is MySpace / Mumford and Sons.